Leaving Lake Argyle, I begin the long journey home, with stop-off points at the Victoria River, making my way into Elsey National Park, then across to Cape Crawford to take the Tablelands Highway down to Barkly. I stop off at Winton, and my final destination before heading for home is the Lara station. I'm looking forward to getting some photography done there, and it's the final destination on my epic westward bound trip.
I'm making my way across the Victoria Highway. I'm going to spend the night at the Victoria River Roadhouse. So I've just walked up one of the lookouts here called the Escarpment Walk, overlooking the Victoria River. So basically the holiday's coming to an end. I'm on my way back home, and still plenty of good things to see, and I've had the time of my life. It's been great. I've made my way into Elsey National Park, which is just near Mataranka on the Stewart Highway. I had hoped to have almost a whole episode on here, but they've changed their crocodile policies, and pretty much all of the areas that I was going to go photograph are alongside the riverbank, and there's warning signs everywhere that says crocodiles don't go anywhere near the water. So I'll see what I can get photo wise. I might merge this episode with the Tablelands Highway one to get enough material to make it perhaps mildly interesting. So it's a very beautiful place, and the Roper River looks delightful. I just don't want to get too close to it.
This bowerbird had a preference for white snail shells and little bits of glass, so he was pretty pissed off when a black GoPro appeared in the middle of his display, and it didn't take him too long to get rid of it. I've probably already mentioned that my ideal bush camping experience is to be somewhere completely alone, knowing that the other nearest person's hundreds of kilometres away, and that way you can truly experience the wonder of spending the night in the bush. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen very often. I'm lucky to get 3 nights out of 10 where I can do that. And driving into Elsey National Park, I did have expectations, A, that it's a national park and not too hard to get to, that I'd arrive to find the usual mini Las Vegas with dozens of caravans with lead lighting and generators going, but pretty much to my surprise, it was actually very quiet. There was only another few campers there, which is still not ideal, but I couldn't see them, and it looked to be another great night. It was stinking hot though, so I had everything opened, and I like lying there looking at the stars and listening to the sounds of the bush. There's not too many of our Australian native animals, apart from birds and dingoes if they are natives, that actually make much noise vocally during the night. And most of the little critters that wander around are just, you hear little rustles and noises. The occasional bird makes a call. Every now and again you hear a squawk as some poor little critters become someone else's dinner. So I was enjoying this last night, and something pretty heavy started thumping around in the bush not too far away. Now roos tend to make a fair bit of noise as they move through the bush, mainly because of their size and their method of locomotion. But this thing sounded more like a drunk starting to sneak into the house and get into bed without waking everyone else up. It was crashing into things and snapping branches and bashing away, and I was trying to work out what it was. Thought probably cattle, or I hoped it wasn't another one of those insane camels coming to finish eating my ute. So while I was pondering what was making such a racket, a dingo howled, and about 537 milliseconds later there was this explosion of movement and noise. Well, the movement, as I looked up into the shadows, was this horrible long snout bearing huge yellow teeth and what appeared to be an enormous set of horns. That was alarming, but it was the sound that was absolutely terrifying. It was unholy and incredibly loud. It was enough to turn blood to ice, bowels to liquid, and make the sphincter snap shut like a bear trap. So it possibly sounded something what Leonidas and the brave 300 heard as the Persian hordes charged, blowing their legendary war horns. But it was probably even worse than that. It was perhaps like if the gates of hell had suddenly burst open and the angel of death galloped out, playing his trumpet through Deep Purple sound system. So I've modified the things that piss me off bush camping, and I've moved feral donkeys right up there with BWCs. The bastards were infesting the place and spent the entire night singing to each other. So get rid of the feral donkeys from our national parks. $50 million years ago, Livistonia morii of the subspecies rigida, better known as the cabbage palm, was widespread right across Australia when it was a much wetter place. But now it only survives in small pockets up here in the north. So it's a bit of a blast from the past, one of the more ancient trees in our amazingly beautiful continent. I'm at the Combo Waterhole Conservation Park, about 150k north of Winton. It's a pretty special place. Back in the year, they built all of these dams across the tributaries in the Diamantina River to create a series of billabongs for a bit more reliable water supply. You'll see a few pictures of the dams. They've survived quite a long time. Unfortunately, modern vehicles have done a fair bit of damage, so they're trying to protect it now. I love conservation parks, mainly because they're generally untouched and not too many people crowd in here. So the road in was, as a result, with no incredibly heavy vehicles bashing across it, it was in really good condition. But I think it's a special place for quite a few reasons. Number one being, in 1895, Banjo Patterson visited the area before we went back to Winton to write a song. And here I am under the shade of a coolabah tree by a billabong. So I'm pretty much sure you can guess the famous song that resulted from his visit here. So yep, this is the billabong and these are the coolabah trees. So really nice place. And once again, I'm pretty happy because I've got it all to myself.
He nearly blew us right back to Australia, and the band played Waltzing Matilda as we stopped to bury our slain. We buried ours and the Turks buried theirs, then we started all over again.
I'm here at Winton, one of my favourite outback towns. It's famous for opals, dinosaurs, Qantas, and the bloke here behind me, the swagman. The first performance of Waltzing Matilda was played at the Gregory Hotel here in town. So I'm here for the night. I always enjoy a look round, especially I'll get something to eat at the bakery because it's usually pretty good, and head off again tomorrow. Well, this is basically my last evening on my trip. I've got one more stop on the way home, but it's just basically a sleepover. I'm at Lara Wetlands. It was advertised as a wildlife wonder, but there's about 70 vans here. There's more arriving, and there'll always be someone who turns up after dark. There's some galahs and crows and bits and pieces of others. I have taken a few photos, but I won't bore you with any more shots of galahs because we've seen enough. So part of my normal evening routine is editing the FOFOA exercises and just making sure that my backpack, everything's ready to go should I need it, because I have a rule that I never walk away from the car if I'm alone without wearing the backpack. That's got a comprehensive first aid kit, obviously some water and some rations, and I mainly just check that the batteries and everything are okay. I've got my satellite phone, my GPS, my EPIRB. In addition to the first aid kit, I always keep some snake bandages right at the top of the pack, easy to get to. That's a life straw, it's a water purifier, a torch, compasses and other various bits and pieces. So I won't be using those again, not until the next trip. I've enjoyed making these episodes, whether anyone watches them or not. They gave me something to do with an evening and gave me a lot of pleasure. It also let my kids know that where I was and that I was okay and having a good time, which I was. But on the trip I've learned quite a few things. I came out here because I wanted to experience the outback that built our country, the real outback. And while I definitely saw that, in some ways I was slightly disappointed, although it has to be that way, that how much commercialisation has come even to out here. There are tens of thousands of people driving around our country, which is a great thing. That's what I'm doing, and more people should do it. But of course, when numbers get that high, they have to be catered for. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But what I learnt was if you stay on the main routes and look at the main places, none of which I regret, you're going to be prone to that commercialisation. I wanted to see working cattle stations, but the cattle stations along the tourist routes serve $45 barramundis and take you on sunset tours. Both, by the way, are very nice, but I still wanted to see the real cattle stations, which I did, and the contrast is quite amazing. Both places have really friendly people. I've met some amazing people on my trip, had a great time, everyone's friendly, but my learnings are that I'll be pretty much staying away from major highways and major tourist attractions on my next trips. To me, doing places like parts of the Canning stock route was not to test my four-wheel driving or to beat the crap out of my car, because it's really not four-wheel driving. It's just really crappy roads that go for an incredibly long way and, you know, bash the shit out of everything. But my reason for seeing it was sitting there picturing someone like Albert Canning, who actually, when he surveyed that route, he walked it. That's pretty hard to imagine, and the local indigenous people weren't too happy on the white fellas coming through their lands. So what I tried to do in some of those places, like the Tanami Desert and parts of the Gibson and Stewart Highway, so it was just walk a few kilometres away from the tracks and the car and everything else and picture what it must have been like for those guys. I got all my safety gear and bits and pieces and, you know, to attract help. But for them, it wasn't that help was a long way away, there was no help at all. And like walking through that mulga country like Stuart must have done on his 3 attempts, it's just so incredibly easy to get lost. And if you're not really switched on, you'd be in a lot of trouble. But I just wonder how many people, when they drive up the Stewart Highway, think of that, or when they're doing these epic four-wheel drive trips, think of what the track was originally made for and how it was done. But anyway, enough of that. I believe it was those people that founded the Australian culture and generally, you know, help out a mate and look after each other. And I think a bit of that's slipping away from our culture at the moment, but I was pretty lucky to have, in my youth, had access to the bush and country areas, and there were some very special people in my life then, and they're still special to me now, even though I don't see them. And one, of course, was the beautiful girl who became my wife. So I've always loved being in the bush. As a young bloke, it was more about how fast I could ride my motorbike through it, but I still enjoyed it, and I still very much do today. And I hope to be around long enough to see a fair bit more of it, and I hope that some of this remains for my grandkids and perhaps inspires them to learn a little bit about the country they were born in.